And then the other asset, the third category, is human intelligence, human assets. And these are folks who, some wittingly, some unwittingly, have been provided with a script and experiences that they honestly believe are real, but that have been programmed and are like very advanced consciousness holographic experiences. If you will, electronic hallucinations. One of the things that I've wondered in my own mind is to what extent there have been people who are embedded in our society who have had these scripted experiences and are sharing information that they believe to be true, but that have been completely scripted. Now, this is going to be very difficult for me to talk about. I don't like talking about personalities. You'll find that in the history of my entire career, I've talked about issues and information and not people. But with that said, I want to talk about a gentleman who I knew quite well, who's passed away, named Dr. Fred Bell. Anybody ever heard of him? A few people. Interesting character. So Dr. Bell, the name sound familiar? Bell, Alexander Graham Bell, descendant of Alexander Graham Bell. And he, in the disclosure materials, one of the only a couple people who aren't named name, rank, and serial number. And I will tell you now, the first time I've ever shared this, why he's not named. He shared information very important, but I had to be very careful of what I included. Now, this gets into the sort of unique responsibility I have in this regard. And he had been given over to the MK Ultra program at the agency at birth, as a very, literally at birth, to the intelligence community, to be programmed as sort of a genius in aerospace and technology, and to work inside the system as sort of a electronically, psychotronically controlled slave. Now, that's how I would put it. Now, his parents did this with knowledge and forethought. How anyone can do this to a child, I don't know. But he was. And I was at his home and saw his badges from Hughes aircraft, from the anti-gravity chamber that Hughes had, from all the different contractors and things he had worked on. And he had gotten, and actually had met Werner von Braun also. But Dr. Bell, when he was discussing this, also would then tell me about these electronic systems that he was put through in MK Ultra, where he had experiences that were transdimensional in consciousness, he thought were real, with beings and civilizations that were horrific, horrible. And that's how they taught him to hate the aliens. So whenever he would, that's how they got him to be enthusiastic about the science, because he had these experiences with these aliens. It was all a scripted psychotronic hologram. And he would then say, like Will Smith in Independent, "Let's go kick alien butt!" And he'd go out there, and when they would hit one of these ET craft and it would fall down, he would just jump up and down with joy. We killed another one of the bastards. I'd sit in his home as he related these things and went, whoa, boy, this is very dangerous stuff. You're dealing with civilizations that have been visiting us on Earth for, dare I say, millions of years. Ancient aliens, anyone? But yes, I mean, we've never been alone. And suddenly we're doing atomic weapons and the nuclear weapons and these scalar weapons and all this other stuff. And they have not pushed back yet. What does that say? It's almost a Gandhi-esque restraint. You know, when Gandhi was shot by the guy who assassinated him, he turned and blessed him and fell. The last thing he did was bless the person in a Christ-like act of forgiveness. So, if they were so horrific, we would have known about it about 1945. It'd have been all over, point, set, match, finished. So they beta tested and have been testing on the public sightings that are man-made UFOs, often piggybacking on sightings of actual ET craft, so that people are confused, don't have any discernment. They've also been involved in using first the stagecraft of little people, and I mean no offense to short people. I know sometimes people get prickly when I talk about this, I'm 6'4", but special operations folks who are under 5 feet and with certain makeup and masks on these anti-gravities who would go then and abduct people. So there have been abduction squads, which are also confirmed by this Air Force intelligence officer, that have been operative for decades. And when it has suited the intelligence community, they have engaged in human abductions that 100% fool those poor victims who really think they were abducted by an ET. And they weren't, but it sure looks like it. Now, there are two modalities used here. The aircraft itself, which is an anti-grav. The stagecraft initially were special operations personnel who now they have robotic ones that look actually like certain species of ETs, extraterrestrial biological entities in the EBINs. But they're man-made. I know several people who worked on making these creatures, and they've been called programmed life forms. But they have integrated circuits in their neural complex. They're 100% man-made, but they would absolutely fool 99.999999 to out to 100 decimal points. Anyone in the public that it was extraterrestrial. Those are fully operational, have been for decades. The early ones were these more clumsy attempts. It's also done in association with electromagnetic weapon systems that alter awareness, can make you black out, and also certain chemicals, drugs, canisters that will be thrown, and the person will then pass out, have no memory of what happened, and then awaken with this other event happen, having been abducted by an extraterrestrial. A lot of people have said, oh, Dr. Greer says no one's ever been abducted. I said, yeah, they have. And they attempted to abduct me out of my hotel room at the St. Moritz Hotel in July of 1994 when I met with Prince Hans Adam von Liechtenstein. So I'm one of those victims. I know what they're capable of. The difference with me is that I knew what it was. Now this gets more complex. And we haven't scratched the surface. And I don't know how disturbed you are yet, but it's going to get worse. Take a deep breath. So in 1989, there was a guy named Mikhail Gorbachev, who was head of the Soviet Union. And then during that period of the Bush era, President Bush, George H.W. Bush, not W, but George H.W., elder, who had been CIA director. And he was a mid-level person on this MAGIC committee, Majority Intelligence Committee, or Majestic. And he and Gorbachev and Peres de Cuellar, who is the Secretary General of the United Nations, and others were planning to disclose that we weren't alone in an event, a disclosure event. In November of 1989, Peres de Cuellar was abducted out of his motorcade at about 3 a.m. in New York City by aliens. Now, I put in parentheses aliens, meaning human assets. And he was taken and on board this human-controlled abduction event and told that if he were to continue with that plan, that the aliens would abduct everyone involved, including the President of the United States. And Prince Hans Adam von Liechtenstein told me this personally because he was personal friends with Peres de Cuellar, the UN Secretary General. And the Crown Prince of Liechtenstein said to me, this is why I don't believe you'll be successful at disclosing the extraterrestrial presence. And I just smiled and I said, well, I believe you have it backwards. And he did not know, this was in July of 1994, of the ability of the intelligence community to set up a hoax of someone like a world figure, political figure like the head of the United Nations. That actually happened. Now, because of that, Gorbachev, Bush Sr., the president, Harris de Cuellar, and others involved canceled the plans to let the public know we weren't alone, because they were concerned that, and I was told, and I'm quoting by Prince Harald von Liechtenstein, that this blew up like an atomic bomb in the Bush White House, and they said, we're staying out of this now. And ever since then, no one in that office has wanted to deal with this, because they don't know what's ET and now what's human. And the stagecraft and the ability to interfere with plans by people who are congressmen or UN secretary generals or presidents is so great that none of them want to risk that happening to them. Because in those elite circles, trust me, because I've been in meetings, those folks don't want that to happen to them.